Welcome to Told History, a channel that brings forgotten moments of world history to life through immersive storytelling. Here, we journey into the past, exploring lost worlds and revealing the people and choices that shaped our present. If you find these stories both haunting and enlightening, please like and subscribe. Your support helps keep these windows to history open for all who seek to listen. In this video, we travel to 14th century Europe, a continent forever altered by the Black Death. Through calm, vivid storytelling, we will explore the bustling markets and daily lives that were soon to be changed by a shadowy, unseen menace. Together, we'll witness how a single event transformed the economy, religion, and very soul of Europe, unraveling the secrets of this pivotal turning point. Chapter 1. Whispers of Death in the Air. Our story begins in the heart of Europe, where cobblestone streets teem with merchants, peasants, and hopeful travellers. The air is alive with chatter, the aroma of bread and clinking coins. Yet beneath the surface, rumours ripple through the crowds. Strange tales whispered of villages falling silent, of a sickness no one can see or name, sending a chill through even the busiest square. It is a time of bustling trade, hope, and burgeoning growth. Ships glide along rivers, bringing silks and spices from distant lands, while farmers lead their cattle to market at dawn. Laughter and music echo from roadside inns, and families gather every evening around the warmth of hearths. Daily rhythms move with certainty, yet, in quiet corners, tension flickers, as gossip turns to anxiety among townsfolk wary of outsiders bearing news. Medieval towns are crowded places, alive with sound and colour, but they are also vulnerable to the unknown. Healers mix herbs in shadowy alcoves, suspicious eyes scan travellers entering the gates. Stories trickle in from coastal ports, entire ships lost at sea, empty save for lifeless crews. These rumours, at first ignored, grow louder each day, the feeling that something invisible and terrible is stirring just beyond the horizon. Villagers gather in open squares, sharing tales by flickering torchlight. An old woman claims to have seen flocks of ravens circling deserted farmhouses. A merchant returns, pale and frightened, his sacks of goods left untouched as he recounts distant places ravaged by sudden illness. Despite all efforts to carry on, anxiety weaves its way into every market stall and church pew, unease settling like dust on the roads. Children continue their games, chasing each other through narrow alleys and open fields, unaware of the danger looming nearer. Parents watch over them with quiet worry, remembering their own childhoods without such shadows. Monasteries and scholars debate in hushed voices, poring over ancient texts, looking for wisdom from ages past. Through it all, the whisper of the unknown grows ever harder to ignore in Europe's villages and towns. In the countryside, farmers walk their lands with unease, noticing that flocks of birds have vanished and wild animals move differently in the woods. At village wells and bakeries, news spreads of travellers mysteriously falling ill. Some say it is a curse, others blame the shifting winds or unexplained omens. Regardless, every echo of bad news feels more personal as if destiny itself has turned its gaze toward the quiet corners of Europe. Yet life continues for most, as habits and hope hold strong. Bakers rise early to shape loaves, smiths hammer iron in the forges, and children recite prayers at dawn. These routines offer comfort, a fragile sense of normalcy. But as dusk falls, the conversations darken, and people glance nervously at newcomers. The boundary between familiar and threatening blurs, foreshadowing a world about to unravel with the coming storm. Clergy stand at crossroads and church steps, urging faith and calm. They remind anxious neighbours that God's will guides all fates, yet even their measured words cannot dispel the chill that accompanies each new rumour. Candles flicker late into the night in homes and abbeys alike, prayers rising into the silence. Superstition and prayer blend together as the search for comfort becomes a nightly ritual across the continent. As spring unfolds, the rhythm of life hesitates. Markets once overflowing with goods now seem tense, as fewer merchants arrive from afar. Stories of whole villages locked behind their doors become more common. The joyous festivals of the season are subdued, masks of worry slipping onto faces that once brimmed with celebration. The sense of dread becomes a silent companion, shadowing every step and transaction. By now, the whispers of death have become impossible to dismiss. The invisible menace has moved from rumour to reality in the minds of Europe's people, leaving uncertainty thick in the air. This was the calm before the storm, the last moments of innocence and hope, before a darkness swept over the continent, changing the fate of generations forever, and setting the stage for an era unlike any that had come before. Chapter 2. The black tide arrives. It began with a single whisper, a hushed rumour on the wind, before spreading like wildfire. Town after town fell silent as the plague crept silently from street to street. Fear crackled in the air, palpable and thick. Crowded marketplaces grew deserted overnight, doors slammed shut, and prayers echoed where laughter once rang. People clung to hope, desperate for answers as a shadow darker than night swept closer with each dawn. Homes that once pulsed with lively conversations now echoed with uneasy silences and muffled sobs. The sickness spared no one, striking children and elders alike. Gone were the comforting routines of daily life. Instead, a heavy uncertainty settled over every threshold. Families huddled together, trembling at each cough or fever. Neighbours exchanged anxious glances through shutters, wondering who would be next, as the unrelenting plague slowly claimed their world. The Black Death's arrival was swift and indiscriminate. One day, families gathered for meals. The next, empty chairs told stories of sudden loss. Streets teemed with fear, not laughter, as blackened carts rolled by, collecting those lost to the plague. The bells tolled more often, their heavy sound a constant reminder of lives changed in an instant. With every passing day, hopes for safety faded further, replaced by raw survival and prayer. Familiar faces vanished, and communities shrank before their own eyes. Markets closed, and shops stayed dark. Even the bravest souls hesitated to venture beyond their doors. The routine noises of city life enders calls, children playing, distant church bells were replaced with silence. This quiet was deafening, filled with the weight of grief and dread. Every house became an island, cut off, its inhabitants bracing for the fate sweeping across Europe. The emotional toll was devastating. Parents pressed their children close, hands trembling, not knowing if they could protect them. Friends were suddenly separated by fear, their lives intersecting only through hurried messages or cries for help across empty streets. Grief took root in every home. The sense of community, so strong before, now fractured, replaced with suspicion and isolation as everyone struggled to cope with the shifting reality around them. Doctors and healers, desperate to understand, wandered from door to door, their voices filled with uncertainty. Many wore long robes and strange masks, filled with herbs to ward off death. Yet even their presence brought little comfort, as news spread that few survived the fever's grip. Rumours flourished in the absence of answers, feeding the fear that seemed to thicken like fog around every home and every frightened heart. Panic spread as fast as the disease itself. People left belongings behind, fleeing in the hopes of outrunning the unseen threat. Animals roamed abandoned streets, adding to the eerie emptiness. Rivers became silent witnesses to the streams of refugees, carrying only what they could hold. For the first time, even the strongest fortified walls felt fragile. The world people thought they knew now seemed unpredictable and perilous with every passing hour. Religious leaders led processions through the empty streets, chanting prayers and swinging incense, hoping to shield their flock from harm. Some villagers flocked to churches, seeking comfort and protection, while others closed their homes tight, trusting only in solitude. Spiritual solace was hard to find, as even faith was tested. The plague, invisible yet merciless, challenged every belief and left unanswered questions in its devastating wake. Much about the disease remained a mystery. Conversations were filled with confusion. Was it carried by wind, by water, or by strangers passing through? People theorized about curses, punishments, and omens. Even the wise were unsure, their advice shifting with every rumor. Knowledge, so often a source of comfort, offered little protection. The unknown seemed as frightening as the illness itself, deepening the collective sense of helplessness. Night brought new fears. Shadows lengthened on the walls as families clung together for comfort. The air felt heavier, every sound amplified by the quiet. Lanterns flickered in windows, small beacons against the immense darkness outside. Sleep was scarce, interrupted by worry and grief. In those long hours, people whispered old stories and new prayers, hoping for dawn and dreading what it might bring to their doorstep. Entire neighborhoods vanished almost overnight, leaving haunting memories behind. The abandoned toys, empty gardens, and cold hearths were silent testaments to all that had changed. Survivors struggled with guilt and sorrow, unsure why they were left behind when so many were lost. Yet, among the ruins of community, tiny seeds of resilience began to take root, as people looked for small ways to care, to remember, and to endure in this altered world. As the black tide continued its march, the world was forever changed. The bonds between neighbours, family and faith were tested, strained by fear and grief. Yet hope lingered in quiet acts of kindness, in a shared loaf of bread, a comforting word, a candle in the dark. Even as the plague remade the landscape of daily life, the enduring spirit of humanity flickered, indicating that the story was far from over. Chapter 3. Faith and Fracture. In the deep shadows of churches aglow with flickering candles, the air carried both hope and fear. As the plague tightened its grip, the faithful gathered to pray for deliverance. Tears mingled with whispered hymns, devotion burned bright, but so too did uncertainty. The desperate clung to rituals old and new, seeking comfort, even as the echoes of unanswered prayers added a hush heavy with sorrow. The death toll mounted with each passing night. For many, faith became an anchor in stormy seas, but cracks began to show. With so many lost, some questioned whether their prayers were in vain. Others doubled down, fasting and flagellating, hoping penance might bring relief. The weight of collective grief pressed upon every soul, leaving communities to wonder if their suffering had meaning, or if it was simply fate. Within the dimly lit sanctuaries, priests tried to guide their flocks. Faces haunted, voices trembling, they led prayers and processions, searching scripture for answers. But even the holy found themselves shaken. The boundaries of faith and fear blurred. Outside, bells tolled endlessly, both a call to worship and a dirge for the dead. With every sound, belief was both tested and mended, a fragile tapestry in peril of unravelling. Desperation spread from household to household. Neighbour eyed neighbour with suspicion as rumours grew. Foreigners and the unfamiliar became easy scapegoats, accused of witchcraft, poisoning wells, or angering God. Superstition thrived alongside devotion, blurring lines between faith and fear. The once united communities now found themselves divided, turning inward, guarded by mistrust, even as the plague swept forward, unstoppable and unstuck, even as the plague swept forward, unstoppable and unseen. In crowded gatherings, anxiety buzzed beneath prayers. Some turned to ancient folk remedies, while others clung to relics, believing holiness would ward off death. The air outside churches was thick with incense and unease. Awash in uncertainty, people searched for signs, any sign, that their fate would be answered. Yet with each unanswered prayer, the strain on social bonds intensified, threatening to break what little unity remained. Religious leaders debated among themselves, their confidence shaken. Was this plague a divine punishment, or simply a test of faith? Some preached repentance, urging public displays of sorrow and sacrifice. Others sought to reassure their flock, speaking of mercy in a time of wrath. Their voices echoed through cramped chapels, trying to rally hearts torn between hope and hopelessness, even as coffins filled the aisles before them. With every funeral, loss became more personal. Families gathered around narrow beds, clergy at their side, reciting prayers for the dying. The rituals of burial blurred into repetition, the words heavy and tired. In some towns, grieving crowds filled the graveyards with laments and pleas. Faith flickered in their eyes, dim but undimmed. Even amid despair, they clung to ceremony, seeking order against the relentless march of death. Yet not everyone found solace in worship. Some turned away from the church entirely, believing it had failed them. Others flocked to charismatic preachers or new sects, drawn to promises of salvation or secret knowledge. These gatherings in tents, hushed, sometimes frantic, spoke of a world unmoored. As tradition was questioned, and old certainty slipped away, the boundaries of faith became ever more blurred. Whispers swirled through plague-stricken streets, stories of miracles and curses alike. Word spread of untouched villagers, saintly relics and healers defying doom. Each rumour gathered followers, fueling hopes or stoking panic. Despite the shadows, rituals still offered comfort to some, the journeys to shrines, the lighting of votive candles. Through shared gestures, communities tried to mend what fear and sorrow had torn apart. Charity and distrust lived side by side. Some risked their lives to care for the sick, compelled by faith or duty. Others shunned neighbours, barricading doors and shrouding windows. The sense of fellowship that once wove villages together now frayed at every seam. In the silence broken only by distant bells, many asked themselves, would faith survive the plague, or would it fracture entirely beneath its weight? As the season wore on, mass graves scarred the landscape. The sight shook even the most steadfast believers. Yet, for a few, visions and voices still promised hope, the dream of renewal after ruin. Whether from fervour or fear, devotion persisted in unexpected ways. New rituals emerged amid loss, binding survivors together for a moment, a fragile unity born in the shadow of unimaginable suffering. In the end, faith both fractured and endured. The world outside candle-lit sanctuaries changed forever, but inside, prayers continued. Some found peace, others only more questions. Yet through grief and suspicion, and in the light of small, defiant flames, communities endured. Led by hope or haunted by doubt, they pressed onward into the unknown, their journey forever marked by the burdens of faith and loss. Chapter 4. The World Reborn. From the shadows of immense loss, Europe began to reshape itself, piecing together a new existence from the wreckage the plague left behind. Entire villages stood empty, but life still pressed forward. Survivors entered this altered landscape with uncertainty, yet also with an undeniable determination. As the dust of tragedy settled, people's daily realities transformed. Hope flickered quietly, nestled among the ruins of memory and sorrow. Fields long left untended now waited for fresh hands. With so many lives gone, once rigid social boundaries began to loosen. Labourers, now scarce, found a new strength in their value. Wages rose, and voices once silenced by poverty found a place at the table. This gradual shift unsettled the old order. Those who survived were not just witnesses to a changed world. They were the very architects of its renewal. Land ownership, once firmly in the grip of the lords, now saw new faces. Fields and homes received careful stewards from among the survivors. Families who had once lived in shadow stepped boldly into newly vacant lands. Such changes ignited disputes, but also sparked innovation. The old ways, tested and found wanting, gave way to reimagined possibilities. The world became more open to those willing to reshape it in the wake of loss. Communities, fractured and fragile, sought connection and meaning. In places where families vanished, neighbours banded together, reweaving the fabric of life through mutual support and shared labour. Communal gatherings, once filled with laughter, now echoed with remembrance. Still, there was comfort in these connections. People leaned on faith and friendship, forging bonds that would anchor them during future storms. Each day carried the weight of grief, but also a quiet strength. In the countryside and city alike, daily life adapted to new rhythms. Villagers experimented with new crops and farming tools, building a mosaic of change across the land. Markets began to hum again, though with fewer voices and quieter negotiations. Craftsmanship gained renewed importance. People relied on ingenuity to create what was lost. Every tool carved and every loaf baked was a testament to the resilience that now coursed through Europe's veins. The church, too, faced transformation. With so many priests and monks gone, spiritual guidance became a communal effort. Parishes opened their doors to new leaders, sometimes laypeople filling roles once reserved for clergy. Rituals adapted to reflect the stark new reality. Funerals grew more sombre, yet prayerful gatherings also became moments of hope for the living. The faith that survived was changed, distilled to its essence and meant to endure hardship. Children who survived grew up in a world their parents could hardly recognise. Playgrounds turned into empty lanes, but every game and whispered secret carried a sense of wonder and hope for the future. These children inherited not only land and tools, but also the stories and lessons of loss. Their laughter, fragile but persistent, became the first brushstrokes painting a brighter tomorrow on the canvas of devastation. Acts of kindness stood out against the sombre backdrop. Survivors cared for orphan children, shared dwindling resources with neighbours, and rebuilt broken homes together. Every small act of generosity became an act of resistance against sorrow, and each helping hand strengthened bonds that would last generations. Through these simple, selfless deeds, hope gradually took root, bringing warmth back to streets and fields once gripped by cold silence. Innovation flourished in areas hit hardest. Townspeople reimagined trade, inventing new ways to exchange goods despite lost markets. Artisans learned new crafts, adapting skills to match the needs of a changed world. Some even set out across borders, spreading newfound knowledge. Creation and curiosity burned brightly, lighting a path through darkness. This creative energy became the heartbeat of a Europe determined not merely to survive, but to grow. Yet, memories lingered. Empty chairs at the table and names whispered at dusk reminded survivors of what was taken. Stories of the past, shared year after year, became both a warning and a tribute. Grief stayed close, woven into daily routines. Even so, these memories also inspired a gentler, more compassionate way of living. The loss became the soil in which empathy, patience, and hope were sown. Over time, life's pulse returned with a softer beat. Weddings filled once quiet villages with music and hope. Fields turned green again as seeds of resilience took hold. The world was not as it had been, but neither was it empty. Survivors, shaped by adversity, brought a new wisdom to their work and relationships. The cycles of planting and harvest began anew, reminding all that rebirth is possible, even after the deepest winter. Chapter 4 draws to a close with a quiet sense of hope. Out of catastrophic loss, a world both strange and familiar emerged. People carried forward the legacy of those lost, shaping a more compassionate and innovative Europe. Every sunrise held the promise of healing without forgetting. Every day offered another chance at renewal. In this world reborn, the future was no longer feared, but greeted with gentle courage and the enduring strength of community. Chapter 5 Shadows and Legacy. As we move toward the end of our journey through the story of the Black Death, we pause to reflect on what has lingered in the shadow of this great calamity. The plague did not simply vanish from memory. It left an indelible mark on every facet of life, permanently reshaping how people saw themselves, each other, and the world they inhabited. The devastation brought by the Black Death haunted generations, compelling society to contemplate the meaning of mortality in ways never experienced before. Families mourned, communities rebuilt, and every surviving soul began to consider the fragility and value of human life. The echoes of those struggles still ripple through time, inviting us to examine how tragedy can inspire strength and transformation, even in uncertainty. Mortality became not just a fear, but a powerful presence in daily life. As bell towers echoed with funeral tolls, stonemasons carved new symbols into graves' artistic depictions of death, hope, and renewal. In many ways, the Black Death gave rise to a new relationship with the boundaries between life and loss, shaping rituals and beliefs that persisted far beyond the last wave of plague. Religion, too, changed forever. Faith, once unquestioned, now battled with doubt and desperation. Some clung more tightly to spiritual traditions, seeking comfort in familiar prayers. Others turned away, searching for meaning elsewhere, or blaming authorities for unanswered prayers. These shifts in faith paved the way for future reforms, reshaping Europe's spiritual landscape for centuries to come. Societal structures were fundamentally altered. With so many lives lost, feudal bonds weakened, and the labour force grew scarcer and more valuable. Peasants found new leverage, demanding better wages and conditions. This economic upheaval gradually loosened the old order's grip, planting early seeds for social mobility and the reshaping of power across Europe's kingdoms. As survivors struggled to rebuild, communities found resilience in unexpected ways. Guilds and townspeople worked together to restore what had been lost. Mutual aid flourished, and a sense of communal identity grew stronger. The trauma endured by generations forged new bonds, prompting neighbouring villages and distant cities to connect in ways that fostered both compassion and innovation. Even in the darkest hours, the human spirit found ways to endure and adapt. Art and literature emerged as outlets for grief and lessons learned. Poems, songs, and stories captured memories of suffering, while offering hope for renewal. The collective memory of the Black Death became a living narrative, handed down through families and communities, reminding all who came after that hardship could be survived. Over time, the legacy of the Black Death wove itself into the very fabric of European culture. Traditions around remembrance like reenactments, festivals, and religious service kept the memory of loss alive, but also cultivated hope for future generations. The shadows of the past became a source of wisdom, shaping how people approach new challenges in their own lives. The world that emerged from the ashes of plague was forever changed. Cities rebuilt themselves with wider streets and improved sanitation. Healthcare and public health became lasting priorities. These transformations, born from necessity and sorrow, laid the foundation for the development of modern society echoes that reach into our present-day understandings of safety and well-being. As we look back, we see that the story of the Black Death is not only about suffering, but also about the powerful resilience that followed. Each life lost became part of a wider human story, woven together by common grief, hope, and rebuilding. The passage from darkness to light stands as a testament to the enduring strength found in shared experience. Today, when we face our own moments of uncertainty, the shadows of the past can guide us. The lessons born out of Europe's darkest days remind us that renewal is possible, that fear can spark innovation, and that solidarity can help us weather even the fiercest storms. Even now, in our own lives, we inherit the resilience shaped by those who came before us. And so, the story closes, but its legacy lives on. The Black Death wove itself into the tapestry of human history, a stark reminder that every hardship, no matter how immense, is bound to the greater journey of humanity. Let us remember those who endured and carry forward the lessons of compassion, courage, and transformation for generations yet to come.